good. Thank you, Luke. You all set? Very good. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your patience. We just came out of executive session, so we did the Open Public Meeting Act. And if you would just bear with us one more moment, we just have to do an annual reorg. So just for expediency, I'm going to make a motion. I'm just going to move the first three sections. So the first annual appointments, I make a motion to pass items A1 through A17. I need a second. Thank you. Any questions? And again, just a reminder, these are posted on Friday, and this annual reappointment and reorganization. It's something we do every year. I don't want to say it's boilerplate, but it somewhat is. But these were posted, which is, if it appears we're going through them quickly, it's just because we've read them already, some of us for several years. Any questions on A1 through A17? No? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent, thank you. Moving on to item B, annual motions and designations, items B1 through B31. Mr. Gilfillan seconded that, Peter?
Yes.
Any questions on the motions or designations? No? I'm sorry, Mary.
Is that the one with the meeting dates for next year for us? Or did I just vote on that?
It is in that section.
Okay. I just want to note that October 14th is Columbus Day. That's all.
Isn't the meeting on October 14th?
Yeah. It's Columbus Day next year.
Oh, I get you.
Okay. Just, I'm throwing it out there.
Are we off?
Thank you. Don't forget the Italians. Exactly.
Yeah, I know it's not, but.
Yeah, students are off, staff is in.
Staff is in.
And we have school the next day.
Yes.
Tuesday. Okay.
We can change, we can,
I was just throwing it out there.
That's all right.
Put 'em on.
Where are we going next Columbus Day, Mary? It sounds like you have plans that we all might want to be
I
invited
actually
to.
might, so, you know.
Okay.
Throwing it out there.
Any
we
addi-
could just, we can move it up a week, to October 7th.
Or the
The following week is the convention week.
right.
So it's just a little tricky if some of us are heading down there the
Okay.
day after for several days. So
Well, we could take I mean, there's
Yeah.
5 of us in
Yep.
town. I'm paying college tuitions. I go nowhere. You're paying college tuitions too. Where are you going? Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Any additional questions on B? Any of the items within B? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? No. Very
Duly noted, passes 9-0.
Thank you. And bear with me one second. Okay. Oh, it's only C1. Okay. C1 is the appointments for standing committees, which are our current committees. We reorged those in January, so this is more just official filing. There are no changes to the committee structure. Any questions? Anybody want to advocate from their committees? Did somebody second? Michelle will second. All those in favor? Opposed?
Noted, passes 9-0.
Thank you. Okay, we're just about to move into the regular board meeting. The only thing I do want to highlight in what we did just all agree to and sign up for, I just want to cover some of the ethics that we've all agreed to as elected officials. There's a bunch of them, but there's 4 in particular that I'd like to read out loud, as did my predecessors. So just a reminder to the board, I will carry out my responsibilities not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members, see that the schools are run well. And in short, basically, the running of the school belongs to Dr. LaSousa, and Dr. LaSousa is our only employee. As long as he's running the school well and we're all in agreement with that, that is our job. Our job is not to decide what Mrs. Chase's role is or any other administrator or teacher. The second one is, I will recognize that the authority rests with the Board of Education, and I will make no personal promises nor take any private action that may compromise the board. I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups, or to use the school for personal gain or for gain of friends. And the last final one that I like to read out loud is, I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the school which, if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals or the school. So I just wanted to, not that I need to remind my fellow board members, but I'd like to say it out loud. This is a volunteer position that we take extremely serious as it relates to our ethics. So I'm going to put that aside. Then I'm going to, okay, so thank you for your patience in that. I'm going to move over to the regular meeting. I do not have any additional board comments other than to cover some of the, what I believe are all the ethics are important, but I think the confidentiality and what our role is. Some folks stop us at basketball games or at the play. Hey, can you fire Mrs. Smith or can you hire Mr. Jones? That's not our role. Our role is strictly financial oversight, policy setting, and to ensure that Dr. LaSousa is running the school well. So I just want to remind folks that we really don't have that much power at all. Okay, so administrative reports. I'm going to send it right over to Dr. LaSousa.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Weber. The big item on the agenda tonight is the approval or the adoption of the final budget. So I have just like a 5-slide update based on conversations that the Finance Committee has been having over the past month, which covers the span of time from when we presented a preliminary budget until now, and we are required to adopt a final budget to be submitted to the Executive County Superintendent. So on the one hand, there isn't a lot of news because the budget is unchanged from the preliminary hearing that we held. You will recall that this year, unlike the past 10 years or so, the board cannot entertain any waivers to go beyond the 2% tax levy increase. So the Finance Committee has recommended, and what you all heard about a month ago when we met about this was that we should strike a budget that maintains all current programs, not really much in the way of significant change, though we did reduce a couple of staff members at the K-3 level just because our enrollment is going down and we've lost some sections at Washington Avenue and a couple of other places, and that we're adding a school psychologist at CMS to help us there and expanding our ASL program, which we introduced last year at the high school. So nothing is new on this slide. However, what the Finance Committee has been talking about in a number of meetings it has held in the past month is just the capital projects some of the capital projects, I should say, that are on our long-range list, items that we know will be coming due or that are coming due, and how to best manage them and accomplish them. So on the left-hand side of the screen is something you saw a month ago, which is simply some of the capital items that are in this year's budget. The bulk of them have to do with roof replacements. We have a lot of roofs, as Mr. DeQuilla frequently notes, and so we're replacing a number of them this summer. That's budgeted. The right-hand side of the slide, though, is where our conversation has really, let me see if I put it, no, I didn't, is where our conversation has focused with the Finance Committee. So there are a couple of partial roof replacements that will be coming due in a couple of years, in a year or two. There are a couple of other bigger items like the track at Cougar Field and our desire to install more secure entry points at all of the schools. And then some also sprucing up of Chatham Middle School, primarily the drop ceilings that are old and aging throughout the building. So the Finance Committee has just been kind of reviewing some of the capital items that are not in the budget right now that we know are on our radar screen and have talked about how to potentially accomplish them. So if you just kind of look at those items, the $1.3 million for the first two items, a significant portion of the CHS roof is another 1.4, Washington roof $350, and then the various improvements at the middle school. They all add up to a significant sum that we can't get into the budget this year. So the Finance Committee has discussed how to potentially include those items in other ways. And one, of course, is just to kick them into future budgets and pick them off 1 or 2 or 3 at a time, just like we're doing this year. The Finance Committee has also been talking about and had directed Peter to get some quotes on real numbers if the Finance Committee and the board were to entertain going out for a separate spending proposal and bonding the dollar amount to accomplish those projects. So at our last meeting, we reviewed some of these numbers, and again, this is just the finance committee the finance committee is not recommending anything at this point. The finance committee is simply exploring how to accomplish some of these projects. And the one benefit of bonding the money to pay for these projects is that the state will then pay a certain percentage, probably in the range of 30 to 40% on most of the projects, like roofs, because there's a debt assessment program that they have in place. So you can see for a $2.7 million bond, and I know the problem. I updated this actually in the other office, so the next slide is going to be a little bit confusing. But for a $2.7 million bond over 15 years, our bond counsel quoted us as about a $23, $25 per year increase on the average house, about $3 or so, $3 and change per $100,000 of assessed value, if the board were to go out and the voters were to approve $2.7 million in bonds. $3.5 million would translate into about $30 a year, roughly, or $4 per $100,000 of assessed value. So the Finance Committee just wanted me to mention that this has been kind of the focus of discussions, how to deal with some of these other projects that are capital in nature that are difficult to fit into a budget. And they've been just talking through the various scenarios on whether to move them and try to pick them off in future budgets with capital reserve, which is of course what we typically do, or to potentially entertain a separate spending proposal or do some combination of the two of those things. And Matt, I don't know, or Sal or anyone else, Mike, on finance who might want to add anything, but that's just the update that I'll provide now.
No, you were pretty thorough. The only thing I'll add is, from a logical perspective, if you know that you have to spend A, B, and C, you know this roof needs replacing, you know this has to be done, these are things that are going to get done, and you have a choice of paying $1 for it or paying 65 cents for it, depending on which option you choose. You know, that's one of the reasons why we would consider venturing out of the capital budget and consider the bond thing. So to make that clear, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation if there was no state benefit. You know, we would just instruct you to prudently budget in capital budget and in the capital reserves in future years. But it's hard to ignore when you're going to get 35% off to do things that you're going to have to do anyway. And that's all I'll add.
No, I don't think I have any for now.
No. Does anybody have any questions for Mike about, or the Finance Committee about bonding versus capital? No? Matt, you didn't want to, you're good? Okay.
The amount of money we're talking about is like 5% of our overall budget. We're 75 million, and that was about a little less than 4,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we're talking about 4 and change percent.
That's correct.
I don't know this because I'm not on the finance yet. How often do our department heads review their budgets to see if there's any way they are, you know, because I know there are times at the end of the year where we have more money left over and we haven't used it. I mean, I know sometimes we're encouraged to spend it or we'll lose it. I get that. But how often do we have a plan in place for how often we review, the department heads review their existing budgets?
Annually.
Annually they review?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we don't tell them spend it or lose
I
it
don't
because
know.
we
I'm not on that committee.
If-
so I'm saying.
we tell them not to spend it because
some places I've been, they
yeah,
do
we-
that. So.
we tell them not to spend it, and we actually shut down the budget, the spending process earlier in the year than the end of the year because all of that money translates into capital reserve.
Account. Because that would go to the capital account. I just was wondering if there's one year you could say, hey, could you really try and find 2%? You know, because I know that it's hard to find. I get that. But, you know, not that we need to look at it like that every year, but if we have this percentage seems like, I get that we can get a discount because of the state, but maybe, you know, we could share that by just reviewing really a little more closely every, maybe every 7 years or whatever, to just see. I don't know how that works on the finance, so I was just curious how often we do a harder look at that, like a hard take at that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's actually not that much money that lie with. Because if at the last presentation back in March, I think roughly 75% of the budget is salary and benefits. So they're not. It's not discretionary from the department head standpoint.
100%.
And then you tack in out of district tuitions, you tack in transportation, and all of a sudden the pie starts to really narrow. So then to get the types of percentages that we're talking about are huge, given the accounts that we actually can squeeze.
Totally understand, but
Yep.
1% off a budget, I don't know. I don't want to keep, I don't want to keep
Mhm.
the children or the students from being able to do what they're usually do. But I don't know if there's like 1 year we can just say, hey, could we maybe try it? Didn't
Yep.
know. Thank
Point
you.
taken.
Mary, the real financial impact that they're going to have to monitor is we've been a growing district for 23 years, and we are now close to being a shrinking district. Not shrinking aggressively, but we've peaked, I think, as a district, right? We haven't peaked at the high school level. So it's going to be how those monies are allocated or spent,
Right.
and a declining enrollment. And that's so that in terms of really having the opportunity to review costs is going to be prevalent because we're in a completely different environment than we've been used to.
Right. So I
So-
didn't know that was a factor too. I want to just say that.
Keeping in mind the development that's going on in the town.
correct.
I mean,
we don't know. I mean, we're not 100% there yet, but
right. And Mayor, I just want to point out, while, we're hoping to be declining or at least leveling off with all the redevelopment, we may find it's a big question mark. And if the enrollment goes up, it's very
100%.
difficult. Yeah. A lot of, some unknowns, and some folks say, oh, what do you think about the redevelopment? And quite frankly, until they tell us the number of bedrooms
Yeah.
in these units, I have no opinion. If it's a 1-bedroom, woohoo. If it's a 3-bedroom, that's a different story.
100%.
So, and none of the plans have landed on number of bedrooms. They talk about the height, the width, the back set, but nowhere has anybody given us numbers on number of bedrooms.
Right.
That's what we need
Yeah.
to,
We get number of units, just not number.
number of
how to
units doesn't
configure.
help me. If it's,
Right.
if
I
it's,
agree.
I just have a question on those, on the items that we are not going to get to the right, that are not included. How are we addressing them, as we need to, or what's the status? I.e., like, for instance, security vestibules at all school entrances. I know we had spoken about that about a year ago. And is that something that we've had further discussion on? Because I don't recall it. I may have missed it, but.
Yeah, not real. A year ago when we discussed this, one of the questions was, do we invest in people, or do we invest in, or whenever, it might not have been a year ago, maybe it was in the summer, or do we invest more in, and we had been focusing on trying to move the Class 3 officer conversation forward, and the vestibules were kind of put
Right.
the next priority.
Right. And that was my recollection, Mike. I just, that's why I'm asking.
Yep. So we have had our architect come in and look at the entrance at every school building and given us a general quote for each one. Some of them are very straightforward in creating a dual door, and some of them are a little bit more complicated. But that's as far as we've gone to this
Got
point.
it. Okay.
And that is something that would qualify for state debt servicing, security improvements.
How much of that would be
I think
states?
40.
40%?
Yeah, 30 to 40%.
Okay. No, because that's just something that, as I know we will, that I would like to have more input on, because, and I don't know right now in the state of New Jersey how prevalent that is. I know some schools are obviously doing that, but, I think that it needs to be a lot of discussion on what we're paying for and what we're trying to prevent. And, after we sink that, capital expense in, does it do what we want it to do?
Hmm.
Because, there are different schools of thought on that, and I just think we need to really have some serious discussion before we go down that road.
And just to add to what Mike said, in terms of those security vestibules, I would ask that after discussion, and that we don't unpack that building by building and piecemeal it if it was something that we were to move ahead on. if it is something that the board does agree that we believe is necessary, that it's kind of an all or nothing thing. I don't think we can decide because it's more cost effective to put a vestibule in one building that we should do it and kind of roll it out over a course of time. I think if our buildings are gonna be secure, all our buildings have to have the same. And I think, you know, in terms of if this, that's my request, and I'll discuss that further when we get into discussion about it.
Part of what we have to remember is that, you know, this is right now in discussion.
Yeah.
Because we don't know at the end of the year what our position's gonna be in terms of a surplus for this school year to put in capital reserve. So once we figure that out, once we know what we're dealing with in terms of a capital reserve balance, then we can start to tackle some of those issues.
There was just legislation passed, right, by the governor, an emergency,
Panic buttons.
button, is that, you
Yeah.
know,
I
that's
saw
Panic,
that.
the panic button?
panic button, which is,
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, so, I mean,
Okay.
that's, you know, one more thing that
And
Trenton has,
then-
come up with that's gonna make the school safer. I mean, I wanna learn more about it, I don't know a lot about it, but I'm very interested to hear their rationale and how they came to that decision and how it's gonna bring us value beyond, you know, what we're doing currently and how it plays into the class 3 officer and, you know, a vestibule. You could spend hundreds of millions of dollars on capital improvements for security. The question is, what are you trying to prevent? And, you know, because the budget is endless if you have that kind of budget. And it's, you have to really question how you're gonna use it because you could do a lot of capital security upgrades and not get a lot of value for it.
I can tell you, Mike, I have been to a couple of presentations now from vendors for the emergency panic systems. I was with the borough police on Friday or Thursday or Friday, and it was very interesting. I think one of the benefits or the goals, I guess, in these systems is that they bypass entirely the dispatch. So you hit the button, whether you're wearing the button or the button's on the wall, and the signal goes directly to a pre-programmed list of folks, including the township or the, in our case, borough police departments, without having to go through the county dispatch. And so they say that the communication is much, much faster than it would be otherwise.
Oh, I would imagine it would almost have to be, right? Because the current system has been like this for many, many years. And it's been the same system and the same issues that have not been addressed, so, good point.
Presumably, we would have the same capability with the class 3 officer.
We would, wherever we had a class 3 officer. Yeah, well, what the vendors do is if the class 3 officer is sitting in the media center, but there's an issue down the hall, their goal is to have every staff member at least, and possibly every student as well with an app on the phone, have the same capability of alerting medical, you know, there's a medical issue, there's a intruder issue, there's some other kind of issue. That's what that's why it takes a lot of discussion, as Mr. Valenti said, but one of their answers to that question is the more, just like we have AEDs sprinkled throughout our building, if you had, and fire alarm poles, one vendor puts something right over the fire alarm pole that will go to the fire department, the police department, or the local EMS. So there's just a greater saturation of points where someone hits a button and you get an instant response. We're exploring all of these options. The law requires us to have them in place by September 1.
September 1.
Does it
And the
require
fund,
us to have them or the police department?
Schools.
and the funding for this mandate?
It's supposed to come in part from
Are you going to cover that?
the referendum that was approved statewide in November.
Okay.
There was a proposal for expansion of county vocational schools and school security.
Okay. And just to remind folks in the audience, Mr. Valenti has decades of experience in law enforcement, so he's not just talking as an opinion, it's somewhat of an expert opinion. So he was in the Port Authority for decades. Any additional questions for Dr. LaSusa? Or any of the finance? What's that? Oh, sorry. He started when he was 18. Right out of high school. Well, we're lucky to have him, I guess was my point. We're super lucky to have somebody involved that was in the ground floor of things like Port Authority, where crowd control and terrorism and things are prevalent every single day of their lives. And, you know, in medical emergencies or seizures, heart attacks. I mean, he's dealt with it all. Dr. LaSusa, I'm sorry, did you have anything else?
That's it
No?
from me.
Very good. Peter, we're moving on.
Yes, just quickly regarding the middle school auditorium, the seats were removed and the asbestos abatement on the floor tiles was fully completed by Thursday, April 11th. The contractor has now begun, and I'll keep you updated on the progress.
And do they work during the school day?
If they have quiet work that can be done, we authorize them the hours of working 7 a.m. to basically 10 p.m. If they're doing demolition that would be noisy and disturbed, then they'll work from 3 to 10.
And how do we segregate, you know, so they don't, you know, the workers can't?
The workers are going right in the front doors directly in front of the auditorium. So they're going right in the front doors and then right into the auditorium through that.
Does somebody check them in the morning there?
We have assigned workers and have their IDs, and we've given them badges that only work on that front door. So they have card access to get in and out. So they, you know, don't have to keep running through the middle of the front of the school and be walked down and somebody go down and open the door. So they do not distract the security officer of the middle school,
Okay.
which is very similar to what we did for the contractor at the when they did the high school auditorium.
Okay.
They went right in through the external door right outside the auditorium.
Directly to the work site?
Yeah. Right. And on the other one, it was brought to our attention by some of the concerned neighbors. The sidewalk at Cougar Field was replaced a week and a half to 2 weeks ago. We received 1 or 2 compliments, so I thank the members of the public for that. And just a note that there were some trees taken down by Morris County. The county came and assessed that they were unsafe, so that's why they removed them all. And
Okay.
that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
I don't have any questions right now. I'm sure I will later. All good with Business Administrator report? Moving over to the committee reports. Mrs. Ciccarelli for personnel.
We have not met since our last meeting. We are meeting on May 13th.
May 13th, thank you. Curriculum, Ms. Clark.
Curriculum met last Wednesday, April 24th. We had a really great, thorough presentation from James Lawrence, our new supervisor for activities, clubs, and we were looking kind of at the structure. He did an audit of all the programs that are offered at the high school and the middle school, and I think we were all in awe of what is offered to our students. There really, truly is something for everybody, and if there's not something, there's things that are sparking up that kids are bringing forth to tap. Some of the great programs that he was informed us about was the Green Team and Homeless Solutions, and how they really tapped into the social emotional learning of our students. We talked about the overnight field trip policies and procedures, and possibly kind of refining those in terms of just what we have in existence now and how we can always tighten those up and make them a little bit stronger. That's it. Am I forgetting anything? No.
Any questions from the board? No? Excellent, thank you. Finance and Facilities, Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes, we met April 24th. We discussed the following. One was the budget, which we've already gone through today. The panic alarms, I got really, actually, after all the discussion in between everyone, I've got nothing to really add there in terms of what we did from a committee standpoint. The capital project plan, which Mike already reviewed. We did, and this is, Jill, your favorite word, we continue to look at the demographer reports and redistricting of the K-3 schools. At this point, this is still an ongoing discussion, and due to the fact that there is multiple issues still to evaluate, which include what is the potential for new homes in the town, how that could impact how we would potentially have to redistrict. And last but not least was a discussion for the Chatham Great Reunion, which is a massive reunion that happens every 10 years. Here in Chatham, they invite all the graduates to come back for a multiple-day event. It's been a huge success for this group over the years. They did put in a request to have a party at the Chatham High School field, which on Saturday night will serve alcohol. We basically agreed to this as long as everything is in line in terms of liabilities, police presence, etc. So our next meeting is May? No idea.
I don't have the exact.
Yeah. So,
Does
So,
anybody have any questions for
questions?
Matt or anybody on finance? Yeah, everybody on finance is over here, so I'm gonna look over here. No? The left side's good. Excellent. Policy and planning, Mr. Arnott?
Ms. Weber, we have not met since our last meeting a few weeks ago.
Excellent. Okay, very good. Moving on to liaison reports. For the borough, I will just report out. I just want to thank the borough for helping us move the shared services agreement along. Special thanks to Carolyn Dempsey, who's the board liaison with the borough council. So she's been extremely helpful in moving that through our bureaucracy, the town's bureaucracy. So it's been very helpful to have her liaison for us. That's all I had to report on that. The township, Ms. Clark?
Yeah, it's just one thing that kind of is both borough and township. On May 19th is the Walk with the Heart Walk for the John Taylor Babbitt Foundation, and that's just something that's been extremely generous for all our schools in our community in terms of having AEDs in our buildings, and any information is on their website and also posted around town in different flyers. So.
The foundation also offers our high school seniors scholarships.
Yeah,
They've paid out tens of thousands of dollars in scholarships to our seniors.
Yeah.
Athletic boosters.
They haven't met again. I
Okay.
think they meet next week, right? First Tuesday of the month, which is next week.
Next week. Okay, thank you. Performing arts, Mr. Arnott?
Thank you, Ms. Weber. First of all, we want to congratulate the following Chatham nominees for Foxy Awards for their performances in our fall production, Radium Girls. They are Lainey Andrachik, James Maltby, for leading actress and supporting actor in a drama. The entire cast for the ensemble of a drama, the scenic design. So we just want to congratulate pretty much the entire staff and everyone involved with Radium Girls for their nominees for Foxy Awards. And then one more thing. Last week, we want to remind everyone that our elementary schools and our Chatham High School band each presented their spring concert. And we want to congratulate all those students and their teachers, Miss Roscom, Mrs. Maldonado, and Brian Conti.
Excellent. Thank you, Sal. Chatham Education Foundation, Ms. Kenny?
Yes, Casino Night was held on Friday at Fairmount Country Club. It was a sold-out event, and I'll just say that CEF appreciates the community support of everyone coming out.
And we appreciate them.
We do appreciate that.
Excellent. Chatham Recreation, Matt, did they meet? No.
report.
Okay. And PTO District Cabinet, Mike, have you all met? Next week?
Wednesday, May 8th.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So,
it's this, yeah, I had a feeling.
Oh, it is?
May 1?
Okay.
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 Alrighty. Thank you for the correction. May 1st. Then we look forward to your report next meeting. So I'd like to make a motion to move the public and executive sessions of the April 8th, the minutes of the April 8th public and executive sessions.
Second.
All those in, I'm sorry, Peter, does anybody have? Matt, okay. Oh, that's true.
I left the executive session halfway through. Do I
We-
abstain or?
Yeah,
I probably, yeah,
okay.
okay.
So, Peter, would you just do the public one first?
If you want to just do the roll call, I'll note that Matt abstains on both and Michelle abstains on the executive.
I left the executive session also.
All right, then we'll do the regular.
'Cause
I
Mary
just
said I
need
had
a second.
I knew I had to.
Thank you. The public session meetings for May 8th, I'm sorry, April 8th. Mr. Gilfillan. Abstain. Mr. Arnick.
Yes.
Ms. Chambers.
Yes.
Ms. Chicarelli.
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Yes.
Ms. Kenny.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan. Mr. Valenti. And Ms. Weber.
Yes.
That passes 8-0-1. The executive session, which was moved by Ms. Weber and seconded by Ms. Chicarelli. Mr. Gilfillan.
Abstain.
Mr. Arnick.
Yes.
Ms. Chambers.
Yes.
Ms. Chicarelli.
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Abstain.
Ms. Kenny.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan. Mr. Valenti. Ms. Weber.
Abstain.
Passes 603.
The Final Four was on. Mary was saving me. Excellent. Okay, so we have our first opportunity for public commentary. Hearing of the citizens during public commentary section of the agenda is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are or are not topics scheduled for the current meeting. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers will be asked to limit their comments to a reasonable length of time. Do you want to tape or no? You want to just go up to it?
I do ask each speaker to please sign in on the list that's on the podium.
Thank you. I'm still Dr. Press. Thank you. I just have two quick items. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm Dr. Bonnie Press. I'm the interim president of CPAG. I'm just here to talk about two quick things. First, to remind all those here that participated in our joint February meeting that our CPAG is really only as good as our distribution list and our ability to communicate to the 700 plus families. And we had agreed that come September, when it came time for families to opt in and out of being like a participant of the distribution list, that we would include the general population of parents and offering for them to either, be on the list or not. Special education can be sometimes a private matter, and not every family wants to get information about flyers or activities, but we certainly want to be able to communicate with those who are interested. The second, recently Dr. LaSousa had raised a suggestion that the CPAG would do better if we tried to make a bigger effort to be collaborative. And so to that, what we're finding is that when we have a goal or an idea to meet as a larger group quarterly, makes it difficult for us to get traction and get an idea moving when we're only meeting every 3 months, and when our communication really is limited to 150 seconds of a monologue that I give every 30 days. So I would ask the board to consider having a board member be a liaison and come to our monthly CPAG meetings. That would allow for more timely communication, greater transparency, kind of create an environment of collaboration. And so I'd like to respectfully request that the board consider having one of the board members attend the meetings. We'll do our best to accommodate everybody's busy schedule and appreciate that you're all volunteers, and do our best to use our time wisely. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Reale. I'll start if that's okay. Okay. I'm here just to recap. I spoke last month, and I want to recap the 3 things. I'm on the dyslexia task force for the Chatham CPAG, and last month we proposed 3 things to the district. One was about partnering for Dyslexia Awareness Month in October. The second one regarded data. These 2 things, I think, are things that we can continue discussion on at our district quarterly meetings. But there is one thing I wanted to talk about tonight because I think it has more of a sense of urgency, and that was the Wilson certification. So we use the Wilson reading system in various forms in our district, and we do not have any Wilson certified teachers. And the Dyslexia Task Force thinks it's really important to support our teachers and reading instruction by having them do the certification process. It's urgent because it takes a year. I think it starts over the summer. We're a little bit behind the 8 ball already because I know everyone's making their summer plans, including our teachers. But I really want to emphasize the urgency because we have so many children in our district who are more than 3 grade levels behind in reading. And I think we have such a great system in place. Can we put a Wilson certified teacher in every building? $2,500 a teacher. I know there are teachers who would be interested who are here already. And so I'm offering tonight. Oh, and I also wanted to mention that I looked into our neighboring districts. So in Madison, they serve 2,500 students, and they have 11 level 1 certified teachers. And in Montgomery County, not every district around us uses the Wilson. So in Montgomery County, there's 4,700 students, and they have 21 level 1 certified teachers, and they have 4 level 2 certified teachers. Level 2 just means you can train teachers. So it starts to build capacity quicker if we can have some teachers do the level 2. They, for instance, have, I think, 2 people going into level 1 and 4 people going into level 2 in Montgomery County. So I'm offering, we are here, this task force, anything that we can do to help get this certification process underway. We have a chathamcpeg@gmail.com email account to contact us. And, I'm Amy Reale at Gmail. I offer my personal email if anyone wants to meet with me and talk more about this. Sure.
I'm not familiar with, the Wilson certification, but what kind of efficacy underlies that certification, and why, I think it's a question for Dr. LaSousa and his staff, but why should we be pursuing that if we're not? What's the underlying thing that's going to make us want to do this? And is there anything solid that we could look at to say this is why we should have this?
There's
there's
a lot of research on this and delivering it with fidelity. It's really a matter of best practices. It's not, if we use the Wilson training, we are not obligated to provide certification, but I always equate it to when I brought my daughter in to get her tonsils done, I didn't say to the ENT person, did you do a 3-day training? Did you watch some videos on this? No, I want to make sure that he has. So, for us, it's best practice. I think when we address student needs early on, then we are able to save kids even going into, I think we save dollars in our special ed program. And then I think we address those 5% of students who are dyslexic and really struggle. The other part is the data thing I mentioned, which I'm happy to meet with you and talk more about, but I know I only have 3 minutes tonight. But really, when it comes down to it, about 5% will struggle with reading at a dyslexic level, and this requires something that we all know in 20 years of research: explicit, structured, sequenced, multisensory instruction. So, that's basically the certification is a year of teachers being supervised in a practicum way, over the course of the year, working with students with a trainer to give feedback versus, a 3-day conference and watching videos. So in brief, that's what I would. Great.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Sally Allen on behalf of Chatham Education Foundation, and I wanted to just take a moment to recap the grants that were approved and are in front of the board tonight. We had 5 grants approved last month, and one was at the district level. We're very excited that we are embarking on a journey with Karen Chase at the helm on a Building Voices grant, which will provide workshops for a license for TED workshops for 100 faculty members to go through. So we'll start this summer with 30 faculty members going through these TEDx workshops, similar to what we're doing with students in the Talking the Talk class at the high school. This will now be carried on through our educators as well to enhance their experience as teachers. We have 2 grants at the high school, one for digital pen tablets for the visual arts, and then virtual reality glasses, which will supplement the foreign language programs and be used by the different language classes. And then in Washington Avenue School, we approved a literacy grant and a STEM grant. So our check for you this evening is for $20,008.76. So thank you for the wonderful grants, and thank you, Karen.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Good, thank you. Make sure folks know what a celebrity we have in the audience. I don't know if folks know Fran Drew, but this is not her first time at a microphone. She's quite a celebrity. Maybe 30, 35 years ago, Mrs. Drew was instrumental in saving, probably single-handedly, the Algonquin Theater, which is a historical theater in Manasquan, New Jersey. She's also helped, keeps an eye on things here in Chatham's, but in addition to that, she's the co-chair of the Glimmer Glass Bridge, Save the Bridge Foundation. There's a bridge that I believe was built in the late 1800s in Manasquan that bridges the Manasquan Inlet with Brielle Tidal Basin, and I think it's one of the only ones in the country, this particular bridge. It's a drawbridge with weighted, it's a very, very cool bridge, but Mrs. Drew is instrumental in helping run a group of folks, probably in the hundreds, if not thousands, of people that want to save this historic bridge. So if she seems comfortable at a microphone, it's because it's not her first rodeo, and she helps us keep an eye here on Chatham as well. So
Thank you.
sorry, Mrs. Drew. I hope that none of that took up any of your time, but the floor is yours. I know. I just didn't want anybody
Thank
to think
you.
this was your first rodeo, and I appreciate your efforts.
Well,
on
the bridge is on the National Register, New Jersey Register of Historic Places, and it's the only bridge of its type left in the world today.
in the world. Interesting.
Yes,
Wow.
in the world. Yes.
It's a very cool bridge.
Yeah. My name is Fran Drew. I live at 32 Inwood Road in Chatham. I'm also on the Chatham Shade Tree Commission, and I was appointed to the Undergrounding Advisory Committee, so we're going to learn how to put wires underground. I attended the Chatham Township Committee meeting last Thursday. After I made a presentation, Tracy Ness asked me if I would come and make the same presentation to you, and I said I would. On Wednesday, May 13th, while driving by Cougar Field on Shunpike, my husband Jack and I saw men from trucks from the Morris County cutting down perfectly tall, beautiful evergreens. I'm sure you've seen those evergreens before they were taken down. Okay. This photo shows the Morris County men cutting down the live, perfectly good evergreens. One of the men told me that the high school asked for the trees to be cut down because they were getting complaints that the kids were tripping on the sidewalk at the base of the trees. So on Thursday, March 15th at noon, I stopped by Chatham High School and I spoke with Mr. Peter DeQuilla, business administrator. He told me that they were getting calls from Chatham Borough Council that the sidewalk needed to be fixed because the kids were tripping. And he said that the borough reached out to the BOE. Everyone on the Chatham Borough Council told me publicly that none of them contacted the BOE. Mr. DeQuilla said a contractor was hired to fix the sidewalk, and the contractor would do it when the weather got better. He told me that the Chatham Borough Council, Carolyn Dempsey, who's here, and Tracy Ness on Township Committee were involved. When I chatted with Carolyn Dempsey, she said she was never contacted and was not involved. Later that day, I got a call from Peter DeQuilla. He told me that he learned that when the county was called to look at the trees, they said the trees were rotted and needed to come down, and that was that. Then on Monday, March 18th, when I drove by at noon, more trees were coming down by the men from Morris County. 2 days later, all the trees were down. So that looked like that. This is what was left of 9 absolutely beautiful evergreens. And if you saw these stumps, there was only one that had a hole in it, okay? We took the photos of all of these. I called Michael Walsh from the County Shade Tree Commission. Michael told me that the janitor at the school told him to take down the trees. He couldn't remember the name of the janitor. When I asked Michael if he had an arborist look at the trees, he said no. As I said, I'm a member of the Chatham Shade Tree Commission, and I can tell you that most of those trees look very healthy. When I called Mr. Peter DeQuilla again and asked for the janitor's name, he didn't know any janitor that did that. He told me that he'd love to have more trees at Cougar Field. Last week, on April 23rd, a new asphalt sidewalk appeared. Now, I don't have a big picture of it, but I'm going to leave this picture with you so that you can pass it around and take a look at it. That's the new asphalt sidewalk, and it's about 6 inches thick all the way.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you.
Where am I? This asphalt sidewalk could have been installed without the loss of 9 beautiful trees. The next day, April 24th, some outfit came along and they ground up all the tree trunks. So if you went there, you wouldn't see what I just showed you in this big thing. And I'll leave this with you too, and you can take a look at it. Okay. The tree slaughter on Shunpike, along with Cougar Field, is a terrible disaster that, well, I'm asking you to please fix. Not only was there miscommunication, no communication, what I'm asking you to do is to plant 9 new green giant arborvitae, okay? And I have a photo because I planted a whole bunch of them in my backyard at 32 Inwood Road because I didn't want to see the houses behind me. They're absolutely beautiful. They don't have big giant roots that go this way. They have a root that goes down. It's a beautiful, beautiful evergreen, and it survived Hurricane Sandy, no problem at all. Okay, 8 years ago I planted them. I invite you, anytime you want to come to 32 Inwood, even if I'm not there, go in the backyard, you'll see them. That's what I'm suggesting. And since Mr. DeQuilla said he'd like to see more trees, that's a thought for you. I also gave the same thought to the folks at the township. You wouldn't have to take the wires down, but it would be a good idea to put the wires underground anyway. And when we learn how to do it and the advisory committee, I'll let you know what we learn. But if you planted them even where the other trees were, they're far enough away, they wouldn't interfere with the wires. Or if you didn't want to do that, you could just move the asphalt, have the asphalt sidewalk closer to where the telephone poles are, like most sidewalks are, and put them along the fence. So that's what I wanted to show you, and I did promise the folks at the Township Committee that I would come. If you have any question, I don't know who actually said take those trees down. Nobody can tell me, and I'm sure there isn't a janitor who did it.
Bring this to our attention.
Yeah, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to go see the freeholder Smith.
It's a county road.
Yeah, I know.
Mr. Gilfillan said, whose property is that?
Yes.
Is that our property there, or is that county property?
I learned from a combination of Ms. Dempsey and Ms. Ness that even though it's a county road, the owner of the property needs to maintain the sidewalk. So that's why the district was responsible and paid to have the sidewalk.
Wait, who's responsible for the trees?
I don't know, but if the county came and removed them, I would presume the county is
Well, then you should
responsible
just
for
tell the
them.
county they need to put 9 new trees in. I got no problem with that.
I will contact the county.
Taking the word from a janitor.
Well, put it this way, if I could find out who contacted the county, I'd ask them to fill some certain potholes and repave some certain roads.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you get us kind of a timeline of the county, just some correspondence, and get back to us and just shoot us an email about,
Sure.
you know, it seems like things went at a rapid pace, so if there was a miscommunication or along the way, maybe we can try to backtrack it so it doesn't happen again.
Will do.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Drew.
Well, thank you very much. And if you need any of my notes, I'll be glad to send them to whoever.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Good luck with your glimmer glass efforts.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, those are cool trees. Thank you. I appreciate it. Oh my God, they're huge.
Hi there, Carolyn Dempsey, Chatham Borough. And I just want to tack on to Ms. Drew's accomplishments. She also went to Antarctica, and which she's the only person I know who's actually been to Antarctica. But anyway, so thank you. I'm here to say thank you to Dr. LaSousa. Thank you to the board for facilitating the visit of the Washington Avenue students earlier this month at our New Jersey Local Government Day at Chatham Borough. We had an open house on April 12th, and about 200 students from Washington Avenue School visited Chatham Borough Hall, and along with their teachers and some parents. And we had a rotation of 9 different spots around Borough Hall and different presentations for the students, and a touch-a-truck activity outside where we had fire trucks and police vehicles, ambulance, and the giant DPW backhoes and everything like that. And it was just a fantastic day. And all the borough employees and volunteers were so impressed with the Washington Avenue students, with their behavior and the their intellect and the type of questions that they were asking. And so it was really wonderful. So we want to thank the participation of the school district, and in particular Washington Avenue School. And Principal Dudlow was very enthusiastic, so we thank her too. And then secondly, I want to thank the parents from CPAG. I've talked with you a little bit, and I think this is a very exciting development, and I know you've done a ton of research and are very passionate. And as a parent, I have a child with an IEP, and I think this is just another tool in the tool chest to help us. It's not always an easy road. So I want to thank you for your efforts and cooperation in the school district. Thank you so much. And then lastly, I have a message from my kids. When they found out I was coming tonight, they said, "Hey, can you tell Dr. LaSousa to get on that, later start on the school day, because we're really jazzed about that." So my kids really want to start school later, Dr. LaSousa. That's all. Thank you so much.
Stick around, everybody, because we're talking about calendars later. Hello, Mr. Heap.
How are you? Good evening. One of the favorite things for the JCs to do is plant trees. If you can't get the county to pay for those trees and replant them, the JCs would be more than happy to discuss paying for some of the cost or all the cost, depending on how much it is. We would certainly like to help out on that. So I would go to the county first, and then if they're not going to do anything, we will certainly try and contribute to the cost of those trees. Second thing is, I don't know, I think it's a sign of the apocalypse. I saw this in the Wall Street Journal over the weekend, and I'm going to test your pop culture IQ. There was a movie in the early 80s called Fast Times at Ridgemont High. In that movie, there is a famous scene where the stoner Jeff Spicoli gets a pizza delivered to history class and then proceeds to argue that he was waiting in the lunch line too long and didn't want to miss history. In a case of life imitating art, it appears that in San Francisco, with the rise of food delivery services, most notably Uber Eats, San Francisco institutions have been inundated, most notably Bay Area high schools. And they're trying to, at this point, put the kibosh on lunch deliveries to high school students. I hope we don't have that problem around here. This is from the same folks that brought you Facebook and the iPhone. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Heap. I wasn't allowed to watch TV then. All right. Any additional public commentary? We have another opportunity at the end, so if something strikes your fancy as we move through the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, Sal. I apologize.
Ask a quick question. So regarding Cougar Field, so first of all, thank you, Mr. Heap. We're sorry about beautiful trees getting cut down, but there's, if I remember, that sidewalk, and I know because my son played football and all my kids did marching band, that sidewalk was a less than safe. Okay, so was that a motivation for wanting to, fix that sidewalk and make it? Was it a safety issue?
I presume that was involved because the roots of the trees did end up causing the, if you want to call it roller coaster effect, and cracking of the sidewalk. So I would think that may have something to do with it. I don't know. I don't know for sure.
But I definitely agree that, so safety is one thing, but I definitely agree that if we're going to be removing trees, certainly if they're healthy trees, it would be a good practice to replace those trees.
As I said in my conversations with Ms. Drew, the district would be more than happy if trees were taken down to replant trees. I told her that I am not sure the trees will go back in the exact same space, because I know that from the curb to the fence, there is not a lot of room, and I don't want to plant trees and have them, rip up a sidewalk. And we've also gotten the comment that without the trees, people like the way that they can identify that there's a field behind the fence when they come down. And the name of the street that runs perpendicular to Shumpike. Pine. They come down Pine, they can clearly see the field without the trees there. So I don't know that I want to put them there. And you also have to fact, when you have the district fence, right next to the fence is the walking path. And I'm not sure that I want the best place to put trees is between, on the other side of the walking path, if people want to keep track of, you want to be seen on the path while they're from the field. So I don't want to create any secluded effects. So there are plenty of other areas that we can add to trees.
One more comment, if you are going to be identifying and considering some trees to re-beautify that stretch, I know from firsthand, and certainly from looking at those beautiful arborvitaes there, but if you look at them, and if you look at my backyard and you'll see mine, they are thick, and they are thick, and it is a wall. So that's a safety issue too, because foxes dart out, human beings dart out. So just make sure you consult with some type of safety personnel, because maybe arborvitaes is the right thing to put there, and maybe arborvitaes are not the right thing to put there.
Okay. Thank you.
More to follow on that. Okay. Any additional comments or questions from the board? No? I'm going to close the public commentary section, and we're just going to go through the agenda. This part is usually fairly quick because, again, these are posted on Friday, so we've had a chance to look at them, and then we'll have another opportunity for public commentary. Again, stand by because we're talking about calendars. So, personnel, Mrs. Ciccarelli.
Yes, I'd like to move action items A1 to A25 on your regular agenda for vote.
I'm always so jealous. Any questions for Ms. Grant? She loves questions. No? Any comments or questions on personnel? Mike and Sal, you're good? You guys are good? Peter?
Agenda items A1 through A25. Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes.
Mr. Arnick? Yes. Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes, except I'd like to recuse for A19.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Valenti?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
A1, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
How'd you go out of order?
A1 through 18, 20 to 25, passed 9-0. A19, 801.
Excellent, thank you. Moving over to Finance and Facilities, Mr. Gilfillan.
Just like to move action items B1 through 21 on your regular agenda. The donations, one we've already heard from the Chatham Education Foundation. Another one, a donation to the high school from Mr. and Mrs. Brower in the amount of $1,047 for the replacement of a crystal trophy bowl, which was accidentally broken last year, including the cost of the annual award crystal plates from 2019 through 2027. I don't know much about that, but I like the historical stuff. Donation to the Chatham Middle School from Menotti O'Connell's family of an EV3 robot, along with all field kit accessories, valued at $700 for the school STEM program. And last but not least, to Washington Avenue PTO, a donation of $1,182 for the purchase of an oversized stuffed beanbag chairs for the school's library. Keep the kids comfy.
Excellent. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Matt or Peter or Dr. LaSousa? No? Well, finance is all over here. Mr. DeCrollo, would you
Agenda
mind?
items B1 through B21. Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes.
Mr. Arnick?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Chicarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Valenti?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda items passed 9-0.
Excellent. Curriculum, Mrs. Clark?
I move item C1 to C3.
Does anybody have any questions, although we're limited on what we can,
We can't talk about it.
we really essentially can't talk about much of this.
Yeah, nothing.
I'll just note number 2 would include an appeal that took place between last meeting and this meeting.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. Any questions? See Dr. LaSusse after. Peter, would you mind?
Agenda items C1 to C3. Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes.
Mr. Arnick?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Chicarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? Mr. Valenti?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda items passed 9-0.
Excellent. Mr. Arnock, I noticed there's nothing for policy. Do you have any audibles?
I do not, Mrs. Weber.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Moving on to board business. Dr. LaSusse, you want to talk about the calendars, correct?
Yes.
So is the goal to present 3? Generally, we present 3 out to the community to weigh in on, teaching community, parents.
That is generally what we do.
Okay, so most of the difference comes in the Easter break of 2020, and the different from each other is where the Easter break falls. Different from years past is we're trying to start the school year a little bit earlier and end a little bit earlier.
Yes, I'll just add calendar 3 has students starting earlier than any of the others. And calendar 4 has students starting later than any of the others.
And,
I
and
think.
calendar 3,
Yeah.
1 day later. Calendar 3, while we end early, I'm not a fan of calendar 3 because I don't like to do graduation if it can be avoided on a Friday for those that celebrate the Sabbath.
Mhm.
Where it can be avoided. In the past, we've been unable to avoid it, but calendar 3 for that reason. I'm sure nobody's going to be thrilled coming back the 27th, so a combination of students starting a little earlier than they're used to and the Friday graduation. I'm not a huge fan of calendar 3. That's my personal. The rest are really, it's just where the Easter break, does the break fall before or after the Easter holiday? I don't know if anybody else had an opportunity to delve in.
Say, to be honest with you.
And we could circulate 4 if you'd
You could
like.
circulate 4. Again, sometimes it's overwhelming.
Yep.
I mean, we look at these all the time, so we know where to hone in and zero in.
I would do a cheat sheet this time, which I never did before. I've never
Okay.
done, but a parent recommended last year that I should do that, and it was a good idea.
Okay. Does the board want to circulate all 4? Do you want to narrow it down to 3? And then if
One
so, which
remaining.
one?
We do it once weekend, Friday of.
Eliminate one, I would say 3, to take out 3.
I'm sorry, Mary.
Yeah, I think you're right. The graduation on a Friday is always tough.
Yeah, and I think you want to leave that.
It's-
And the early break, I'm not a fan of the March one.
Okay. Does anybody strongly
Yeah.
object to removing calendar 3 and putting out the other 3?
I agree with your reasoning, and I'm not so sure putting a religious reasoning for many people in the town. That shouldn't be a popularity thing that's
Oh, right.
involved
Maybe
in the
just for
vote.
one.
I see what you're saying.
So, so for that reason and that reason alone, I would suggest putting forth 1, 2, and 4.
1, 2, and
That's
4?
what I did,
Okay. All those in favor of putting out calendars 1, 2, and 4 for community and staff input?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Mike, any questions, or is that fairly
Got it.
clear?
Clear.
There we go. Okay. Does anybody else have any additional board business? Oh, sorry, Mary.
Go ahead, Matt.
I know we all worked on the arts at this town for how many how many years. For those of you, I think, that went to the spring play this year, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. You really
musical?
finally got to see the fruits of all the work that this board put into redoing the performing arts centers in this town. I'm sure we're going to see the same success down at the middle school when it's done. We did see Radium Girls in the fall, but you really get to see the pleasure and just the incredible facility that became when we had the musical, because all the different things that we added in there were able to come out in terms of putting on a production, a musical versus just a play. So, I wanted to thank everybody on this board who's been around for a long time for putting in all that work and that effort and putting in all the years and focus on the arts for this town, because that was an absolute incredible weekend of plays that our kids put on in this school. And it was a real kind of an emotional thing for me, because knowing that we put so much effort into it and finally getting to see it in use under those circumstances was an incredible experience for me. And I think the town, I had people come in from out of town to watch that, and they were just completely shocked at the quality of our facilities. And then I think they were actually more shocked at the quality of what our kids were able to perform. And I'm pretty sure that they're going to see that lead actress on Broadway one day, because she was incredible. But anyway, to people that have been around and supported it, I want to thank you personally for that, because it's nice. As on the Board of Ed, you don't get to see a lot of things that you put your effort into. A lot of it's kind of non-visible, but when you see something smack you in the face and that you worked all hard on to accomplish, I just want to tell you guys thank you. I think the town.
The performance was amazing.
Amazing.
Mary, you had a item?
I do have a little PSA. I know that we're knee deep in the middle of spring sports season and everyone's running all over town to get to games and get to practices. And I appreciate that, because I did that for many years. But I happen to live on a street that intersects Fairmont Avenue, that every bus that stops in Chatham Township or Chatham schools that has a bus, except I think the one that goes to Milton, stops at the bottom of my street. And in recent weeks, I've watched just cars go whizzing by, red stop school buses. So I implore my friends and my neighbors to be conscious of it, because I did, in fact, have my youngest son pulled back by the hood of a collar and narrowly miss getting hit at that intersection. And I've seen them in other spots in town, and I only bring it up because when I see something more than 3 times, I think it's worth mentioning. So I implore everybody to take stock. When you see the school bus, know that the children are more concerned with getting home. And I know that we're all trying to get where we're going, but please just try and keep an eye out and be aware that the buses are stopping, and the kids need to get time to get off the buses. So I just wanted to say that, because I've seen a few near misses and a lot of cars blowing by some red lights lately. So that's all I'm saying.
Responsibility of the bus driver to try to get those license plates and report them to the local police. They're supposed to, right?
We've had that.
The bus driver can attempt, but I'm not a bus driver, but I would presume he's watching the kids getting off the bus, as well as he's probably trying to look in 8 different spots, as well as rear view mirrors or side view mirrors, to see what the cars are doing, plus watching the kids as they're exiting. And depending what grade level bus route it is, he's making sure that there are parents to greet the certain age of, kindergartners and or first graders. So the bus driver has a lot to do. If possible, I'll mention to the bus company if they can look out for, to try to get license plates, but it's difficult.
I didn't think about that, Michelle, but I thought I'd use my platform here to mention it. It's scary.
I mean, what a wonderful PSA, but I don't know how many people are going to be watching the YouTube of the proceedings of tonight. But we have a couple of members of the media right here. If there's somehow, from an educational standpoint, on a big banner for, you can have, please, this is the rule regarding school buses. Please obey the law. I don't know how to say it, but work with the police department for a quick banner, put it up. I think it's worthwhile. I think you have greater reach than we do. So.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, it's super important. A classmate of mine was killed in 8th grade by that. He was in a hurry to get to a camp out. He went in front of the bus, and a car just plowed him right over. So it happens. You see it on the news. You see it video.
It's a nasty ticket.
It's 5 points.
5 points.
And vehicular homicide if you kill somebody.
Yeah.
And jail time.
That's a nasty ticket. I
But
can't imagine.
thank you, Mary. But have you ever called the police and said, hey, I have the...
I have not. I will maybe take that upon myself to do that next time.
Yeah, if you...
I didn't think about it.
I think just, more, maybe, the squeaky wheel kind of.
I don't ever like to be a squeaky wheel, but just thought I'd use my PSA.
Perfect, thank you. I appreciate it. Any additional items for the board or board business? No? We have our second opportunity then for public commentary. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, make an orderly line. Don't rush. Alrighty. Alrighty, very good. You gotta go to the mic. You gotta go to the microphone though. We won't hear you unless you go to the microphone. It's being recorded.
Reality again. My daughter on Lafayette got off a bus and someone went by, and I will say her bus driver, who was female, I will also add, honked, yelled, and wrote down the license plate. And so I do think the training of the bus drivers is great, but I have seen it happen so often too. It's distracted, it's hurrying, and unfortunately all the bus routes are on our main streets. So I ditto what you say, Mary.
Excellent. Thank you.
And Carolyn Dempsey again. I'm going to ditto what Mary said as well. And just my nephew, who lives in Pennsylvania, when he was in 8th grade, won a National Science Award for creating a camera that went on the stop sign that comes out on school buses, and it would only take a picture if a car tried to go around when the stop sign was out. And he went, in front of the legislature in Pennsylvania, and they passed that. So. He's not. He won a trip to Disney World.
All right.
Which at the time he was,
yeah.
So, so I don't know. Maybe there's a project for a middle schooler here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carolyn. Any additional public commentary? No? Seeing none. We are breaking again for executive session. Action will be taken? Action, it's a confidential student matter, so we are breaking into executive session. We will be back to take action. Again, it's a confidential matter, so we will not be chatting about it. So we'll come back here if need be.
So it's going to be a long wait.
Oh, it doesn't start till, I thought it started.
Or when
Okay,
we're
very
able
good.
to make it happen, but.
So, okay.
So it'd be a long, no, we can all go, but if these guys want to stick around, they might be here until 11 o'clock.
Right. Okay.
Can we get Uber Eats to deliver
Right. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
Please drive safely. So I close this portion of the public session. We're going to adjourn to executive session at